is EQ, a poem by Studio Steve. Harsh voices that hurt listeners' ears, muffled words, inarticulate or unclear. First-time listeners repelled so quick, potential fans that otherwise might stick. Noisy, buzzy, unpleasant sonic farts cloud my message and break my heart. Then, as if from a dream, I found you, my audio doctor, my love, EQ.
You know what? I like that idea. Yeah?
You know, I've never realized before that you were so versatile.
Hey, what's going on, podcast people? I'm Studio Steve, and thanks for checking in on the Pod Sound School. If this is your first time here, you should know this is a place you can come for all your podcasting resources, whether you're first getting started or whether you've been podcasting for a while. On today's episode, we're going to talk about EQ, or equalization. Understanding EQ is vital when it comes to audio production or podcast production so that your voices can sound pleasant and natural and nice to your listeners' ears instead of sounding muffled or inarticulate or worse, noisy and harsh. So by the end of this video, you're going to understand what EQ is, the basic settings, how it works, and how you can apply it and start putting it to use on your podcast. And before we dive in, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. That way you can stay in the loop with all of the free podcasting resources we put out each week. And don't hesitate to come say hi to us over on social media at Pod Sound School. We also just started a Facebook group called Podcasting for Bosses. It's a great group for those looking to leverage the power of podcasting to expand their business or brand or expand their reach. So come join us over there on Facebook. All right, let's get to it.
Equalization.
In audio production, EQ refers to frequency-specific volume control. Frequencies are measured in hertz. Hertz is a unit of measurement that refers to how many times per second a waveform completes a cycle. Now, kilo means 1,000. So kilohertz means 1,000 hertz. You will see these written as Hz and kHz. Human hearing, on average, only hears frequencies ranging from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, or 20,000 hertz. Let's look at some EQ units to help all this make sense. This is a standard 7-band EQ that comes with all Pro Tools versions. It's called 7-band because it has 7 different sections or brackets of frequencies that can be adjusted. You'll notice we have a graph here, which gives us the convenience of visually understanding what EQ does. Here along the side, we see dB, which stands for decibels, or volume. And along the bottom, oh, would you look at that? We see 20 on one side and 20K on the other. Could that be the 20 hertz and 20 kilohertz human hearing range of frequencies we just talked about? Why, yes, indeed. Okay, so let's take a look at these 7 bands and get an idea of how an EQ unit works. First, you'll notice this square here and the letters HPF. This stands for high pass filter. High pass filters are also commonly referred to as shelving EQs because they typically will cut the frequency in a shelf shape. A high pass filter allows the high frequencies to pass through while cutting the lower frequencies. Watch what happens on the graph when I select the In button. You'll notice at the left side of the graph, which represents the lower frequencies, the shelf appears. If I adjust the first knob here, the shape of the shelf will change. This allows us to make the cut more specific at one frequency or gradually from the frequencies above. If I adjust the frequency knob here, you'll see the shelf slide to the right, which means the cut will happen higher up on the frequency spectrum. Typically around 100 hertz is about the highest in the spectrum people will cut. Now, if we move on to the next band, we see the letter LPF. This stands for low pass filter. This will allow the lower frequencies to pass through while restricting the higher ones. Basically the same functions, but on the opposite end of the spectrum. As I bring it in and adjust the knobs, you can see that. Typically 8 kilohertz is about as low as people will cut here. These are very helpful EQ tools. The high pass filter is also a common tool you'll find on many condenser microphones, oftentimes as a switch with this shelf icon sloping to the left. So now you know what that switch on your microphone does. Okay, now let's look at the last 5 bands. We have LF, which stands for low frequency, or LMF, low mid frequency, MF is mid, HMF is high mid, and HF is high. Notice that the red LF band and the blue HF band both have these extra switches on them, and they both default on the switch that looks like a tuning fork. The tuning fork shape will operate very similar to the shelf. Notice here on the LF band, if I reduce this gain knob, that the low frequency slopes to the left. And if I adjust the frequency knob here, the point at which the slope begins will change. And if I adjust this nifty knob labeled Q, the steepness of the slope will change. Now if I select the other shape, which is commonly called the bell shape, you'll see now that I can cut or boost the frequency in the shape of a dip or a bump. And when I adjust the Q knob, it ranges from a bell or bump shape to more of a spike shape. As the cool graphical illustration here suggests, by making the shape more of a spike, I will only be boosting or cutting a very specific frequency. But if I make the shape more of a hill or a bell, it will start to include more of the surrounding frequencies. Now, if we move over to the LMF or low mid band, you'll notice that it is only available to adjust in the bell shape. I can boost or gain with the gain knob. I can select what specific frequency I want to adjust using the frequency knob, and I can decide how much of the surrounding frequencies I want to include in these adjustments. And the MF or the HMF, mid or high mid, work the same. It wasn't until I started playing around with graphical EQs like this one that I started to understand how EQ units work. Let's quickly look at an EQ unit on a channel strip and see if we can make sense of what the buttons and knobs do. Here is an SSL channel strip that nicely represents many common channel strips you'll find on mixers or plugins. You'll notice as we move through the channel strip, we get to this Equalizer section. Now, most importantly, at the bottom of this section, you will see an EQ in button. We'll need to press this button so that the EQ will be turned on to this channel. First, take a look here where it says filters. Yep, you guessed it. Here are the high and low pass filters. Remember, high pass filters cut out low frequencies, and low pass filters cut out the high frequencies. The slope icons printed next to the knobs here help us to visualize this. Now you'll notice here at the top it says HF, high frequency, and there's a bell button. Selecting this bell button will toggle the HF between a bell shape and a slope shape. It's the same for the LF section at the bottom here. Then we have 2 more bands, blue and green, HMF or high mid and LMF or low mid. There's 3 knobs on each band. One that says dB. This is the same as the gain knob that we saw on the other EQ. This will cut or boost the volume. Then we have a KHZ knob, that stands for kilohertz, and it is the same as the frequency knob from the graphical EQ we just looked at. This will select which frequency to cut or boost. Notice to the left here we see 0.6 and 0.8 printed. This means 0. kilohertz or 800 hertz. And on the blue knob down here we see 0.2 or 200ths of a kilo, i.e. 200 hertz. So as you can see, this is a 6-band EQ that has essentially the same controls as the previous EQ unit. Phew! Has your brain stopped yet? Mine almost has. So now that you understand how EQ units work, you'll have to begin to familiarize yourself with frequencies. Frequencies are like the color of your sound. Becoming good at EQing is a lot like painting with sound. And like painting, it can take a whole lot of practice to get good at it. Luckily, in podcasting, the main instrument we are going to be EQing is the voice. There are many tips and tricks for EQing voices, and it would take many episodes to cover each one. But a good tip when starting is to be very subtle and to use the less is more strategy. So for example, if you were to hear a muffled, low tone in your voice that seems to be taking away from the clarity, turn that gain knob or the dB knob all the way up and sweep through the frequencies until you feel like you have the most muffled frequency pinpointed. Then cut a few dBs of that frequency out of your vocal track, maybe in a nice bump or bell shape, and you'll notice the voice open up and become more clear. Likewise, if you hear a brittle or a harsh high end resonating on your vocal, perform the same practice, but on the high frequency band. And one final thing to remember when it comes to vocals, and especially speech, is that between 1 kilohertz and 4 kilohertz is where our ears most recognize human speech. So this range of frequencies is where the clarity and the consonant sounds are at. So be careful not to reduce too much from this range. Well, there we are, pod doggies. I hope you feel like you've learned something and you're ready to start dialing in those mixes, customizing those voices, and tackling EQ. You really just got to get in there and start playing around with it. And if you're still feeling confused or frustrated, leave some questions in the comments below. Or come find us at social media at Pod Sound School. We'd be happy to answer any questions you have. We also have our Facebook group, Podcasting for Bosses. That's a great resource for you. Lots of people in there trying to improve their podcast. And again, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, stay up to date, join the community, come back and see us again soon. Next episode is going to be a fun one, all about compression. Thanks for tuning in, people. Keep chasing those dreams. If you're on the fence about podcasting, just dive in, start doing it. We're here to support you, and you'll find that the podcast community is so warm and welcoming. Your voice deserves to be heard, and it deserves to sound its best. Happy casting.